war never ends. I've done things I'm not proud of. I'm the last scout standing. You don't know about war.
Hey guys, welcome back. We are playing Teemo today. So if you're having a really bad day and you just want to make somebody suffer, then Teemo might be the right champion for you. So his passive, when you stand still, then after a short duration you become invisible, and if you're on brushes then you can also move around while being invisible. The moment you go visible, then you get a short burst of attack speed, and that is really important that you abuse this right from level 1. Because you have PTA, and with that attack speed then you can proc that keystone really fast. You start off the game with E level 1, so that is an ability that passively empowers your auto attacks, and then you also have that poison. So when you auto attack people then you deal damage, but you also deal damage over time. And then you have your Q, single target damaging ability that also blinds the opponent. And blinding means that if they auto attack you, then all of their auto attacks are going to miss. So Teemo is a big counter to those champions who mainly rely on auto attacking, where most of the damage comes from auto attacking. So something like a Tryndamere and a Jax. But not only these champs, but also AD carries in general. And then you have your W, which gives you a lot of mobility. That's very good for kiting, chasing people, and just escaping in general. So it is a pretty mobile champion and extremely annoying to play against. In the top lane, you usually want to play him with Ignite, because that gives you a lot of kill pressure. Most of the time you're playing ranged against a melee matchup, so you can really bully them throughout the entire laning phase. So your main goal here is that of course you auto attack the enemy champion whenever they try to walk up and farm. And that Q, guys, save it for when they're within range and when their auto attack is about to land, because you really want to abuse that short duration you have on that Q. Make them miss as many auto attacks as possible, so don't just use it instantly, but use it the moment they're about to auto attack you. Teemo, you play around the PTA, 3 auto attacks going to make you deal bonus damage. That's what you have to play around. Go for these short trades and try to zone them away from the minions when they walk up to farm. Hit them with a couple auto attacks, and then you can also finish up with a Q to get some extra poke damage off. Because this ability does not only blind people, it also deals a decent amount of damage. That turns into a lot of damage in the later stages when you get more AP items. The champion is pretty simple though, he does not have any hard mechanics. So it's a champion that anybody can pick up. Just keep in mind that he's pretty squishy though, so if you get ganked then you most likely end up dead when you don't have your flash up. So because of that invisibility passive, when you get ganked and you think that you'll not be able to run all the way to the tower, you can just run into the brushes and pray that that passive activates before the enemy champion gets there, because then they will not be able to see you. Meaning that control wards and the red sweeper will not be able to detect you. The red sweeper can show your movement, but they cannot target you. So in order for people to be able to actually see you, they need something that will show, detect true stealth. So something like a Twisted Fate ultimate or Lee Sin's abilities. That kind of stuff does counter you, but everything else they're going to be screwed. And then remember that you can move around without breaking that invisibility if you are in brushes. So you can really kite the enemy champion around and really make sure that they don't reveal you by hitting you with some random abilities. So play him really aggressive and don't let the enemy champion farm for free. Constantly try to proc that PTA and slowly will down the opponent, and then once they're within kill range you have that ignite, you just flash on top of them, hit them with a couple auto attacks, Q, and then use that ignite as a finisher. So when you hit that level 6, you get the shrooms, and what it does is that it's like invisible traps that the opponent cannot see. And when the opponent steps on them, they're going to deal AoE damage over time. So it can hit multiple opponents, and then it's also going to slow people. It's important to know here that the traps don't stack, like the damage does not stack on top of each other. So you don't want to like place all the traps at one spot, but especially in the top lane, try to like place them in a line. Because they give you vision, but it also makes it insanely difficult for people to chase you down. So place them in a line, so when you try to escape, you can like run through them, and then the opponent will be forced to run into them. And then the shrooms will also bounce, and you get some extra range when you get more points into your ultimate. But this is what Teemo is known for. Place those traps in the best possible spot. So right above the river, place them in a line, as I said. That's going to counter the enemy jungle camps. And also when the enemy laner is trying to run you down and kill you, you just run through the shrooms, and when the opponent hits them, they're going to take a lot of damage, and they will also be slowed. So while they're slowed, you can just return damage, and then maybe you might even be able to pick up the kill. That is going to kill the opponent so much, I can promise you guys. You just want to be as annoying as possible. That's your entire goal when you play Teemo. Really look for those kills. All the way since the start of the game, just look for those kills. You have Ignite, meaning that you want to play it really aggressive. Teemo is a champion that does best with the Ignite because he has a lot of damage in the early game and ranged into melee matchup that is so obnoxious to play into. You can also use the shrooms for wave clear, but it's important that you know how the minions move into the lane so you can place them in a spot where the minions won't accidentally, take out your shrooms. So try to like place them in a line, and then also in the brushes and such, but also try to place them in a way so even if the opponent uses sweeper and tries to clean out the shrooms, or if they have control wards, then it will not spot all of them. So that's a big reason why you want to place them with some space between each shroom. First of all, because the damage does not stack, and the second reason is that you don't want the opponent to like clean out all of your shrooms with a single sweeper or a control ward. But that is pretty much all the important stuff about Teemo. Try to be as annoying as possible, play really aggressive in the landing phase, constantly try to proc their PTA in short trades, and then when you can all in, that's why you go in with that Ignite. You can see we have a lot of damage, and that is going to get so much better when you have the Nash's Tooth, because that is going to empower your auto attacks as well. So he becomes even more annoying at that point. Sometimes the opponent will accidentally step on your shroom while they're low HP, and you also get kills that way. That happens actually very frequently in the mid game. When people walk up to water something and they accidentally step on a trap. The Teemo is really fun to play, not so fun to play against, but that's not something we care about. We just want to have fun. And also that ultimate, guys, is also really good when you fight around objectives, because you can use that to cut off entrances. Like you can place one shroom on each entrance and people will not be able to walk past it. They have to waste their control wards and the sweepers just to take out your shrooms, but then you still have the vision wards up. So it's a champion that adds a lot of pressure onto the opponents. It's very annoying to play against him. You can see how frustrated the opponents are this game. They're really trying to camp us and they're failing almost every single time. And that is something that's going to end up tilting them so much, and that's why Teemo is so annoying to play against. So play really aggressive, but also be smart. Make sure that you have some proper vision, because when you play those squishy ranged top laners, then it's very normal that you get camped a lot. Because the enemy laner will constantly be asking for the jungler to come out and help them, especially when they're getting stumped. So make sure that you have good vision, and you also stack up those shrooms on the lane and on the river as well. So even if the enemy jungler comes, they're going to be slowed when they step on them, and then you can escape. Also remember that you can bounce the shrooms on top of each other, something you can do if you cannot walk up and place them. If it's too risky for you to do so, then just bounce them. And they can like keep bouncing endlessly, of course depending on the amount of shrooms you have. But you can also use it to wave clear, because that is the only AoE damage you have. So if you just want to push out the waves, then just place the shroom right in the middle of the wave so it hits all of them. And that with a couple auto attacks, and that's more than enough to clear it out. So you can easily end up going out of mana. That's why I think the Presence of Mind is such an important rune for Teemo, because that gives you that extra mana regen, especially when you're trading, and that's something you're going to do a lot when you're playing a ranged versus melee matchup. So you can really abuse this rune, and it's also going to help you out with that mana regen. Especially when you have to spam that ultimate, you know, place down as many shrooms as possible. There will be cases where you run out of mana if you don't have Presence of Mind. Just keep pushing in the top lane. Teemo is not very strong in teamfights. He can be decent though, because of his shrooms. His shrooms, as well as his Q, the blind, that's a big counter to AD carries. Especially something like a Kai'Sa or a Vayne. That's why Teemo becomes a really good counter, and that's why he can also be pretty strong in teamfights. But he does not have very good teamfighting capabilities other than what I mentioned previously. So it's a champion that does really well in the side lanes. You know, you try to invade the enemy jungle, place down some shrooms, you wait for people to face check, activate some of the shrooms, step on it, and that's when you go for kills. That's what Teemo is really good at. So that's what you have to play around. Our mid laner did great this game, and we're also doing really great top lane. It's really fun to play against these champs that get kited easily by slowing abilities and Qs. We're going to have a really good time against these types of champs, but what you do not want to play against is hyper mobile champs or mages and such, where your Q does not do anything. So if you're playing against a champion that's going to outtrade you the moment they are within range, Cassiopeia, for example, is a big counter pick, so you really want to avoid picking Teemo into that. Because against something like a Cassiopeia, even though you hit everything within range, she's going to outdamage you, because that is how she works. She's a hyper carry, Teemo is not, so she's going to outtrade you and win a 1 versus 1. So you do not want to pick Teemo against these types of champs. You want to pick him into bruisers or carries where the main damage comes through auto attacks. So like a Tryndamere, for example. That's where Teemo can be really good. So it's a champion that you mostly want to use as a counter pick, because if you blind pick Teemo, then people will always be trying to counter pick you. But even if you're behind, guys, Teemo can still be useful just because of that ultimate, the shrooms. That provides so much damage and utility in fights with the slows. So it can really help your teammates, you know, kite people, keep them away from objectives and such. So even if you're behind, then this champion can still be useful. And you can see those shrooms also gives you some really nice vision. At the same time, also really tilting the enemy jungler. You can help out your teammates, but you should mainly be trying to do that when you're going to fight around objectives. If you are not, then I would just recommend that you stay in the silence and then you play for the objectives. So the tower, the outer towers, you want to push it and take down the tower. When you're done so, show in the waves and then get into the enemy jungle, try to take away his camps and then also shroom the entire enemy jungle. Because if the enemy jungler gets hit by a couple shrooms, they're going to be low HP. They might even end up dying, but even if they don't, as long as they're low HP, then they will not be able to gank. And that's going to make life so much easier for your teammates. So we got the outer tower here, so the mid game has begun. What do you do with Teemo in the mid game? The same thing actually, just stay in the silence and just shroom the entire map. When you shut out the wave, then you just do like I do right here. Proc the plants, the vision cones, take away the jungle camps, and then shroom his jungle. So when he walks in, he's going to lose a lot of damage, and then you might also sit there in your passive and be ready to kill him if he's within kill range. Just keep pushing in the silence. It's a lot better for you if you don't have to group, because then you can just focus on being as annoying as possible in a 1 versus 1, really pressuring the opponent because they will not be able to farm. Their Q is so difficult to deal with because it blinds people, they will not be able to auto attack, so you can use this when they're farming under the tower, and if you do this when they're trying to last hit a cannon minion, they're going to be so annoyed. So just pressure as much as possible as a split pusher, because that is where Teemo is best. And then from like the mid game and late game guys, when you have a lot of shrooms up, you want to try to place them around the objectives. So don't place them right on top of the objectives, make sure that you split them up, make sure there's some distance between each shroom, so even if they use something like a control ward or a red sweeper, they will not be able to take out all the shrooms. Place them at entrances, you know, like the entrance to the Baron pit and such. Place them there because people usually stack up, and when multiple people get hit by one shroom, it's going to take like half the HP, especially if it's a squishy target. And if that happens, then you're going to win the next fight, or it's going to be a guaranteed objective. So make sure that you place the shrooms in a smart way, where the opponent will not easily be able to take them out. You can see that Q guys, his auto attacks are going to miss, and then you just escape with your shrooms. That's what you gotta do. Use the shrooms because they slow people. And this is how well Teemo can kite if you do it properly. And then also make sure to spam that taunt if you want to be even more annoying. That is vastly going to increase the chance of them rage quitting. But that is pretty much what you have to do with Teemo. It's a very simple champion that can be picked up by anybody, even if you're new to top lane. Top lane is where he's best, but he can also work as a support, as a jungler and as a mid laner, but his best role is top lane. For the mythic item, you have a couple of options. You can go for Liandry's as well if you want to, but Riftmaker gives you that extra true damage and also works with your poison and the shrooms, so that has some great synergy, especially if you're playing against a tank or a bruiser, because that kind of makes sure that your damage stays relevant even in the later stages. You will still be able to shred those tanks because of that true damage you're getting. And because of that poison, then you also stay in combat for longer, meaning that this will be activated for longer as well, so you get maximum usage of this mythic item. We have mostly been staying top lane almost the entire game, and that's usually what you want to do. Sometimes you have to group, and that's preferably when you're fighting for objectives. For anything else, just try to stay in the silence. And the support is also going down without being able to take down the shrooms. So yes, it is a very annoying champion to play against, but he's also very fun. So mid game and late game, you know, stack up those shrooms. Place them in the good spots where you think people will not yet start their sweepers. For example, if you're going to fight around the dragon, people will usually start the sweepers when they get close to the brushes and such. So you can place them in front of the brushes, so they will get hit by the shrooms before they get to activate the sweepers. So on Teemo, you can be the one flanking, but you can also be the one kiting. It really depends on how the game is looking. If you have a very fed AD carry and the rest of your team is griefing, then you can just peel the AD carry because you have that Q, so you can blind the opponent whenever he's trying to engage onto the enemy carry or the AD carry. Then you can peel him that way, but you can also just wait in your passive, you know, wait while being invisible, wait for the AD carry or mage to step up, and then just quickly burst them down, because Teemo does have a lot of burst damage. And when you do have ignite, then of course they will also not be able to out heal you. But this is pretty much how you want to play Teemo, guys. It's a very simple champion that anybody can pick up. So I hope this video was helpful. As always, thank you so much for watching and see y'all in the next video.